Hey everybody, today in After Effects I want to show you the common keyboard shortcuts that I use to help speed up my process. Hopefully you'll follow along and you'll learn them as you go. First of all, we have common keyboard shortcuts like Control S saves your project, Control O opens up an existing After Effects project, Control N creates a new composition, I'll just create one there, and Control W closes the currently open panel. So there I just closed my composition. I can switch, for example, to this paragraph panel. Control W closes, and now I've got the character panel open. Control W closes that, so that's pretty handy. If you have a composition open, like I have composition 1 open here, you can hit Control K to pull up the composition settings dialog box. And I will just change maybe our background color to something else, whatever. For this next set of keyboard shortcuts, I want to have some layers to work with. So I create a new camera and I create a new solid color layer. And I'll make that solid color layer a 3D layer. Now, to switch between my different tools up here, of course I can use keyboard shortcuts. My default tool is this selection tool. The keyboard shortcut is V, and I can use it to click and drag around an object. The H key on the keyboard is the hand tool. Similarly, I can just actually hold down the space bar if I want to pan around. Or if I have the selection tool selected, I can also use the middle mouse button to kind of click and drag to move. Z switches to my zoom tool. I can click and drag to zoom in. I can hold Alt and click to zoom out. Similarly, I can roll the mouse wheel to just kind of zoom in and out as well. W switches to the rotation tool up here at the top. C switches to your camera tool. There are actually several different camera tools here, and pressing C multiple times will switch between those tools. Y is your pan behind tool. You can use that to move an anchor point of a layer. And finally, Control T is your text tool. Of course, there are more tools than that up there, but these are probably the most common keyboard shortcuts that you'll need. Now we have special kinds of shortcuts for moving the playhead around in the timeline. Down here in the composition, I'm going to select this layer and duplicate it by hitting Control D. Maybe I'll do that a couple times. And now if I want to easily move around the playhead, I can actually hold Shift while I scrub. And you'll notice that the playhead kind of snaps to the in and out points of the layers. Similarly, if I click and drag a layer while holding Shift, it will attempt to snap to either the playhead or other layers. If I have a layer selected, as I do here, and I hit I, it moves the playhead to that layer's in time. And if I hit O, it moves the playhead to that layer's out time. The in and out time of a layer are where the layer begins and where the layer ends in time. If I have a layer with some keyframes like I do here, I can move the playhead between the keyframes by hitting J and K. The playhead will automatically jump forward and backward to the next available keyframe. It will do that for any layers that have keyframes currently exposed. If I were to hide this layer's keyframes and I hit J and K, it actually ignores those keyframes altogether. Control left moves the playhead one frame back in time. Control right moves the playhead one frame forward in time. Similarly, if I hold Shift while doing that, I'll move the playhead forward or backward 10 frames. So Control Shift left is back 10 frames, and Control Shift right is forward 10 frames. Let's talk about the keyboard shortcuts that we can use to expose the different properties of these layers. P will show us the position, S will show us scale, and R will show us rotation. T will show us the layer's opacity. If the layer has any audio and we hit L, it will actually show us the levels property. A shows us the layer's anchor point property. If I put a mask on this layer and then hide the properties and hit M, it will show us the mask path property. If I double tap M, it shows us all of the mask properties. If I hit F, it just There we go. If I hit F, it just shows the mask feather property. If I have a layer selected and I hit U, it will show me any properties that have keyframes or expressions on them. If I double tap U, it will show me any properties that have been modified from their default value. If the layer is currently showing properties and I hit U, it will hide all of the properties. If I click and expose several properties of a given layer, I can hide the ones I don't want to work with by holding Shift and Alt and clicking on them. This makes it really convenient to only work on the properties that you're currently focusing on. There are several different ways to zoom in and out. You can, of course, change the size of this scroll bar. You can click and drag on this little thing down here. But you can also use the plus and minus buttons on the keyboard, the ones next to the backspace key, not the ones on the numpad. I can zoom in and I can zoom all the way back out. If I press the semicolon button on the keyboard, I will zoom all the way in, and if I press it again, I'll jump back out. If I want to zoom into my composition, I can actually press the comma and period buttons on the keyboard. So I can zoom in quickly and I can zoom back out quickly. If I want to move a layer, there are some keyboard shortcuts to help me out with that as well. Let's say I want to line all of these layers up. I'm going to select them all, move my playhead to where I want them to start, and then if I hit the left bracket button on the keyboard, it will move their input time to be where the playhead is. Notice that this doesn't actually make the clip any longer or any shorter. It only moves what we already have trimmed. Now similarly, if I want to set the end point of any of these layers to the playhead, I'm going to hit the right bracket on the keyboard. If I actually want to trim these layers, there's a keyboard shortcut for that as well. I'll just zoom in a little bit here using plus. And let's say I want to trim these so that they all start at exactly 1 second. I just move my playhead there. And instead of hitting the left bracket, I'm going to hold down Alt and hit left bracket. That's going to set the selected layer's input time to where the playhead is, but it will actually keep the end time where it is. So again, it's not actually moving these layers in time, it's just adjusting where they start and where they end. Some miscellaneous keyboard shortcuts that might be helpful. If I hit tilde with any panel selected, it will make that panel go full screen. So if I want to focus on just the composition, I can do that, or the project panel, or the effects panel, or the effect controls panel, any panel. If I press the 0 button on the numpad, it will start rendering out a RAM preview, and then it will play the RAM preview once it's done rendering. However, the RAM preview will render out everything in this work area. If I want to change the size of the work area, I can grab the left edge or right edge of the work area and move them, but I also have keyboard shortcuts for that. Let's say I want to move the work area to match these layers. I'm going to hit I to move the playhead to the beginning of that, hit B to set the input time for the work area, O to jump to the end of this layer, and then N to set the input time for the work area. So the B and N keys are right next to each other on the keyboard. That should help you remember that those set the input and output times of the work area respectively. Now if I hit the 0 button on the numpad, it will play back just the work area. If you want to hear just a preview of the audio, you can actually hit the period button on the numpad that's next to the 0. If you have compositions nested inside one another, hitting tab will actually show you a flowchart. Here I only have one composition in this entire project, so it's not a very interesting flowchart. In the composition panel, if you want rulers, you can hit Control R to show the rulers and Control R again to hide them. Hitting the single quotation button will hide or show our title safe guides. Similarly, hitting Control and a single quotation mark will hide and show our grid. If you want to add a marker to an asset or the timeline, you can hit the multiply button on the numpad to add a marker wherever the playhead is in time. So here I had this layer selected, and let's say I want a marker over here at 2 seconds. I just hit that multiply button. If I don't have any assets selected and I hit that multiply button on the numpad, it will add it to the timeline up here. I can click and drag those around. I can right click to delete them. But markers can be very helpful, especially when working with audio. Finally, there is one more keyboard shortcut that you might find handy. So I've got this cool green layer right here, and I want to swap it out for a red asset in my project. What I'm going to do is select that layer in my composition, and then while holding Alt, I'm going to drag the layer I want to replace it with down here, right on top of it. And there you go. We just swapped out an asset. Super helpful. This was a quick rundown of several of the keyboard shortcuts. You might have to watch this video a couple times, but good luck, and I hope it helps. See you later.